My ex used my credit card to impress his new girl, so I shut down the entire smart home while they were inside. I was staring at a glowing UberEats receipt for an $80 surf and turf platter charged to my credit card, watching the delivery driver's GPS dot pull right up to the apartment I had been forced out of just 3 weeks ago. My chest tightened, a cold knot of pure, unadulterated fury twisting in my stomach as I realized my toxic ex, Derek, was buying a filet mignon dinner for his new girl using my money, sitting under the premium, automated mood lighting I had built from scratch. I felt the heat rising in my neck and my vision went blurry with rage as the audacity of the situation washed over me. I wasn't just paying for his romantic evening, I was subsidizing his new life in a high-tech paradise that I had engineered with my own 2 hands. Derek and I had been over for nearly a month, a spectacular, bridge-burning collapse of a relationship that ended with me packing my life into a rented van while he stood by the door, arms crossed, wearing that signature, insufferable smirk. He was a mid-level finance bro who practically lived in quarter-zip sweaters and operated under the delusion that his baseline mediocrity was a gift to the world. Throughout our 2 years together, he had relentlessly mocked my career as a high-end home automation specialist. Whenever I spent my weekends soldering custom circuit boards, writing automation scripts in Python, or perfectly calibrating the ambient light sensors in the living room, he would roll his eyes. He called my entire life's passion a glorified electrician's hobby, endlessly sneering that my routines were just useless toys for people who couldn't handle real life. Yet, when the lease was up and the dust settled, he refused to let me dismantle the system. He threatened to drag me into a protracted legal battle over the security deposit and the fixtures of the apartment. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and desperate to escape his constant gaslighting, so I walked away. I left behind a fully integrated, voice-controlled ecosystem that I had spent thousands of hours perfecting. I later heard from a mutual friend that Derek had been bragging at a downtown bar, telling his frat star buddies that he kept the tech in the breakup, acting like he had conquered my domain. He honestly believed he had won. Derek, a man who barely knew how to restart a router without calling his ISP and crying, assumed that because he had logged into the Xfinity portal and changed the Wi-Fi password to some unimaginative variation of his favorite sports team, he had successfully locked me out of the system. He fundamentally misunderstood the architecture of the beast he was living inside. He thought Wi-Fi was the brain. He didn't realize it was just a superficial limb. I didn't need his Wi-Fi. As a professional who installs these systems in multi-million-dollar estates, I never build a network with a single point of failure. Before I moved out, I had quietly hardwired a hidden cellular backup bridge into the master hub, discreetly tucked away behind a false panel in the utility closet. It ran on a dedicated 5G data plan that I paid $10 a month for, designed specifically for remote maintenance and emergency firmware flashes. I still had absolute, root-level access to the entire apartment. Every light bulb, every thermostat, every motorized blind, every speaker, and every smart lock was still listening exclusively to me. Furthermore, months prior, when he had a habit of losing his things and blaming me, I had meticulously sewn waterproof smart tags deep into the lining of his favorite leather gym bag and hollowed out a tiny cavity beneath the insoles of his prized Yeezy sneakers. Those tags pinged an encrypted server I hosted offsite. As I sat in my new, cramped studio apartment, watching the UberEats charge clear my bank account, I pulled up my tracking dashboard. The sneaker tag was stationary by the front door. The gym bag tag was in the bedroom. He was home, he was comfortable, and he was completely oblivious to the fact that he was existing inside a digital cage of my own design. I opened my terminal, my fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard, the rhythmic clacking filling the quiet of my room as I connected to the master hub via the cellular bridge. The command line blinked back at me, obedient and ready. I checked his digital calendar, which was still syncing to the local network because he had never bothered to revoke the API tokens. Tomorrow was Monday. He had a massive, career-defining quarterly presentation scheduled for 8 a.m. He needed his sleep. He needed to be sharp. I decided he wasn't going to be. I didn't just plan to turn the lights on and off to annoy him. That was amateur hour. I spent the next 2 hours writing a custom, localized script that bypassed the cloud servers entirely, ensuring it would run even if he managed to physically sever the coax cable coming into the building. I titled the executable file, the X-Tax Eviction. I set the cron job to initiate exactly at 2 a.m., poured myself a glass of cheap wine, and pulled up the real-time telemetry from the apartment's sensor array. I could see the ambient noise levels drop as he and his date presumably went to sleep. I waited. The digital clock on my secondary monitor ticked over. 1:59 a.m. Then, 2 a.m. The haunting began subtly, an escalating symphony of technological terror. At exactly 2:15 a.m., the smart bidet in the master bathroom, a luxury Japanese model I had installed and calibrated myself, received a root over override command. I didn't just turn it on. I engaged the self-cleaning nozzle sequence, bypassed the internal water heater, and set the pressure matrix to absolute maximum. A jet of ice-cold water blasted out with the force of a pressure washer, violently hitting the closed toilet lid and spraying across the tile floor. I watched the motion sensors in the bedroom detect immediate, frantic movement. Through the integrated microphone array in the hallway hub, I heard the faint, muffled sound of his footsteps slapping against the hardwood. "What the hell is that?" a female voice screeched in the background. "I don't know. It's the stupid toilet," Derek yelled back, his voice thick with sleep and rising panic. I watched the system logs as he desperately mashed the physical buttons on the side of the bidet. Nothing happened. I had locked out the hardware panel. The icy water continued to ricochet around the porcelain bowl like a derailed freight train. He eventually had to drop to his knees in a puddle of freezing water to manually crank the shutoff valve on the wall. He stumbled back to bed at 2:28 a.m., his heart rate undoubtedly elevated. I gave him exactly 2 minutes of silence to close his eyes. At 2:30 a.m., I executed phase 2. I woke up Sir Cleans-A-Lot, the heavy-duty smart vacuum nestled in its docking station in the hallway. I had completely rewritten its navigation algorithms for this exact moment. It didn't start a normal cleaning cycle. Instead, it detached from the wall and began aggressively patrolling the perimeter of the master bedroom door. I cranked its internal suction motor to overdrive, but that wasn't enough. Using the high-fidelity Alexa speaker integrated into the vacuum's chassis, I pushed a localized audio file. I maxed out the volume limit, bypassing the safety protocols. The sound of a two-stroke lumberjack chainsaw revving at full throttle exploded into the quiet apartment, echoing off the hallway walls. The vacuum rammed itself violently into the bedroom door, backed up, recalibrated, and rammed into the door again, the chainsaw audio blaring louder with every impact. My phone lit up on my desk. It was Derek. I let it ring 3 times, enjoying the sheer desperation radiating from the vibrating screen, before I hit accept. "Turn this off right now, you psycho," he hissed, his voice trembling with a mixture of raw fear and absolute fury. The mechanical roaring of the vacuum and the digital chainsaw ripped through the speaker of my phone, almost drowning him out. "I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, Derek," I whispered into the receiver, keeping my voice dangerously calm, a stark contrast to the absolute chaos I was orchestrating. "I don't live there anymore, remember? You kept the tech. Sounds like you're having some user error. The vacuum is attacking the door. It sounds like a horror movie. Fix it, Zoe. Make it stop," he screamed, the sound of a heavy thud echoing through the phone as he presumably threw a shoe at the door. "Have you tried restarting the router?" I asked sweetly. I hung up and immediately blocked his number. I turned my attention back to the terminal. He was awake now, and his date was undoubtedly terrified. The motion sensors showed him pacing frantically around the bedroom, too scared to open the door and face the screaming appliance in the dark. I initiated the thermostat warfare protocol. Derek was a notoriously warm sleeper who kept the room at a crisp 65 degrees. I accessed the master HVAC controller and engaged the parental lockout feature, a setting designed to prevent toddlers from messing with the dial. I spiked the heat to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. I sat back and watched the internal temperature graph climb as the heavy-duty furnace roared to life. Within 15 minutes, the bedroom would feel like a tropical terrarium. The second the sensors detected the temperature hitting 90 degrees, I commanded the system to immediately cut the heat, kick on the emergency AC compressor, and drop the target temperature to 50 degrees. Sweating profusely, then instantly blasted with freezing air, his physical comfort was completely eradicated. I watched the logs as he desperately pulled up his phone app, trying to manually override the climate control. Every time his phone sent a request to the hub, my script intercepted it, instantly denied the permission, and logged the failure. Access denied, access denied, access denied. That's when the real bombshell dropped. While I was waiting for the AC to freeze him out, I decided to poke around the local storage partition of the master hub. Derek, in his infinite technological wisdom, had never unlinked his personal phone from the automated local backup routine I had set up months ago. Every time he connected to the apartment's network, his phone silently dumped a compressed archive of his text messages, photos, and app data to the hidden hard drive in the utility closet. It was meant to be a failsafe in case he lost his phone, but now, it was a goldmine. I decrypted the latest backup archive and ran a quick keyword search through his iMessage database, filtering for my name, and then, out of curiosity, filtering for texts sent in the last 24 hours. I found a group group chat titled Wolfpack. The messages were sent while he was sitting at the dinner table, supposedly wooing the very woman currently trapped in the bedroom with him. Derek, 8:14 p.m. Bro, this girl is so thick, but her voice is like nails on a chalkboard. Just gotta endure the dinner and get her back to the smart pad. Usually seals the deal. Derek, 8:17 p.m. Yeah, I'm using Zoe's card for the UberEats LOL. Stupid BTCH forgot to wipe her Apple Pay off my iPad *. Derek, 8:45 p.m. God, she will not stop talking about her astrology chart. Pray for me, boys. If I don't score tonight, I'm making her walk home. My jaw physically dropped. The anger that had been simmering inside me instantly crystallized into something cold, sharp, and brutally clinical. The minor annoyances of the bidet and the vacuum were no longer sufficient. He wasn't just a thief, he was an arrogant, manipulative parasite who was actively degrading the woman sleeping in his bed while simultaneously stealing from the woman he threw out. It was time for the climax. The motion sensors indicated Derek had finally braved the hallway, kicking the deactivated vacuum down the stairs, and was currently taking refuge in the living room, trying to pull the thermostat completely off the drywall. His date had stayed in the bedroom. I didn't want her to miss the show. I hijacked the massive 75-inch smart TV mounted in the living room and the secondary screen in the master bedroom. I bypassed the HDMI inputs and engaged the direct screen mirror feature from the internal network interface. I didn't play a scary movie. I didn't flash strobe lights. I took the raw text data from the Wolfpack group chat, formatted it into massive, high-contrast white text on a pitch-black background, and pushed it to both screens. I watched the power consumption metrics spike as both televisions flared to life at maximum brightness, casting an eerie, clinical glow through the dark apartment. The screens began to slowly, deliberately scroll through every single trash talk text Derek had sent about his new date to his friends. It played on an infinite loop. Her voice is like nails on a chalkboard. Stupid BTCH forgot to wipe her Apple Pay *. If I don't score tonight, I'm making her walk home. Through the hub's microphone, I heard the exact moment the woman in the bedroom read the screen. Are you out of your ******ing mind? She screamed, her voice piercing through the drywall, echoing into the living room where Derek was currently staring at the same scrolling text. Wait, no, babe, I swear I didn't write that. I've been hacked. Zoe is hacking me, he stammered, his voice cracking with pure, unadulterated panic. I heard the sound of heavy footsteps, the rustling of fabric, the slamming of drawers. She was packing her things. Don't babe me, you absolute psychopath. You're making me walk home? Watch me take an Uber, and I'm charging it to your damn phone, she shrieked. A door slammed so hard it triggered a minor seismic alert on my vibration sensors. The heavy thud of the front door confirmed she was gone. Derek was alone. I watched his silhouette on the thermal imaging overlay pacing the living room floor. He was broken, confused, and desperate. He marched toward the utility closet. He finally realized that changing the Wi-Fi wasn't the answer. He found the Xfinity router and simply ripped the power cord out of the wall. The apartment lost external internet. The telemetry briefly stuttered on my screen, but within 3 seconds, the cellular backup bridge seamlessly engaged. The terminal blinked green. Local network re-established. Cellular uplink stable. He thought it was over. He walked back into the living room, collapsing onto the couch in the dark, breathing heavily. It was time for the nuclear option. Derek didn't know that when I designed the security architecture, I had hardwired a secondary, battery-powered siren deep inside the main HVAC return vent in the ceiling. It was designed to alert the whole building in the event of a catastrophic fire or a home invasion, entirely independent of the main power grid. I typed the command, execute alarm_breach_protocol.sh. I slammed the enter key. Every single smart bulb in the house, the kitchen pendants, the bathroom vanities, the bedroom lamps, the hallway sconces, snapped on instantly, illuminating the apartment in a horrific, blinding blood-red hue. The strobe effect kicked in, pulsating the red light at a nausea-inducing frequency of 10 flashes per second. Then, the siren activated. It wasn't a standard alarm. It was a deafening, 120 decibel industrial klaxon that physically vibrated the floorboards, completely inescapable because it was projecting from the ductwork itself. Overlaid on top of the screaming klaxon, routing through every Sonos speaker in the apartment, a deeply synthesized, robotic voice began to broadcast on a continuous, unyielding loop. Insufficient funds detected, the robotic voice boomed, rattling the windows. Please deposit $80 to resume sleep mode. Insufficient funds detected. Please deposit $80 to resume sleep mode. Through the microphone, I could hear him sobbing. It was a pathetic, broken sound, the sound of a man who had finally realized the absolute terrifying scale of the invisible forces he had messed with. He was trapped in a pulsing red nightmare of noise and heat, totally isolated, completely at my mercy. Okay, I'm sorry, he screamed into the empty room, holding his hands over his ears, pacing frantically as the red lights strobed across his terrified face. At exactly 4:45 a.m., my phone buzzed on my desk. I picked it up. It was a Venmo notification. Derek had sent a payment. It wasn't for $80. It was for $200. The note attached simply read, "For the food and to please make it stop." I stared at the screen, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across my face. I transferred the funds directly into my checking account. I took the $80 he stole, and I internally categorized the remaining $120 as a non-refundable professional consultation fee for emergency IT services. I waited until I received the official email confirmation that the withdrawal had cleared my bank. Only then did I return to my terminal. The klaxon was still screaming. The lights were still flashing. Derek was still trapped in his self-made purgatory. I didn't just type a command to turn the system off. That would leave the door open. That would leave the infrastructure intact. I needed to ensure that he could never, ever benefit from my labor again. I initiated the final sequence, a script I had written called the nuclear wipe. This wasn't a factory reset. A factory reset just clears the user data. The nuclear wipe was designed to systematically access the bootloader of every single connected device on the network, the master hub, the cellular bridge, the thermostat, the light switches, the vacuum, the smart locks, the motorized blinds, and intentionally flash corrupted, unreadable firmware directly into their permanent memory. I hit execute. I watched the terminal cascade with thousands of lines of code as the script aggressively pushed the poison pill outward. Device after device disappeared from my dashboard. The living room TV went offline. The thermostat flatlined. The bidet severed its connection. Finally, the master hub itself initiated the self-destruct sequence, overwriting its own core operating system with absolute garbage data. In a fraction of a second, the screaming siren cut off. The strobing red lights died instantly. The entire apartment plunged into absolute, suffocating pitch blackness. Total, unbroken silence filled the air. He was left in the dark, standing in a freezing puddle of bidet water, completely alone. Every piece of smart tech in the apartment was now permanently bricked, reduced to nothing more than expensive plastic paperweights embedded in the walls. The smart-locked motorized blinds over the massive living room windows were fused shut, impossible to open without a tiny physical override key that I knew for a fact was currently sitting in the bottom of a cardboard box in my new apartment across town. When the sun came up, he wouldn't even be able to let the daylight in. He would have to explain to his landlord why a $10,000 infrastructure system was entirely unresponsive, requiring thousands of dollars in professional labor to rip out the drywall and manually replace the hardware. And he had a career-defining presentation in exactly 3 hours. I closed my laptop, the quiet hum of my new studio apartment suddenly feeling incredibly peaceful. I leaned back in my chair, sipping the last drop of my cheap wine, watching the early morning light slowly bleed through my manual, non-motorized blinds. Am I the monster here, or did he get exactly what he deserved?
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.